tough acts to follow. I'm Kim Getty from Deutsch LA, and I have to tell you, I was feeling really good about this sort of power dress thing I'd put together. I was Skyping with my daughter this morning. She told me it looked like a penguin. She tried to buy it back, like, no, like a stylish penguin, like a super fashion-forward penguin. So, greetings from Antarctica. In all seriousness, thank you so much to Kat and Rebecca, wherever you are, for having us here today to talk about something that matters so much to us. We met these amazing women when we did a road show at the Deutsch LA office last summer, and I think we all left so inspired and desiring so much to be a part of this bigger conversation. And thank you to Kristen for suggesting that we do this together. I know Karen and I are so immensely proud to be sharing the stage with you guys and with Mullen, which is an agency that we are appropriately jealous of. So I am the COO of Deutsch LA. And that's a fairly big job. But over the last couple of years, I've also become the CFO, which is the Chief Female Officer. And that brings with it a whole host of responsibilities that I didn't necessarily ask for, that I didn't necessarily even fully realize until recently. Because in my role as COO, I am a spokesperson for the agency in a way that I wouldn't be if I was a man. And in my role as COO, I'm a role model for the agency in a way that I wouldn't be if I was a man. And I think right now that role of Chief Female Officer is first and foremost about protecting and advocating for female talent. I look around at all the amazing opportunities for creative women today. Tech companies, startups, a lot of you guys are here today, are making incredibly exciting opportunities for women. Going in-house at brands is becoming a very seductive option. And ad agencies have not always been the most supportive environment for creative talent. If we want to stay competitive, we have an imperative to ask the hard questions. Are we doing the very best that we can to make the experience of being a part of our agency and our industry the best choice? The choice that you can't walk away from. So we set out with a goal, which was to destroy the conference. Really, we wanted to make it completely irrelevant in just a few years. And the thing that was so great is that when we spoke with Kat and Rebecca about it, they were all for this. They were like, yes, let's do this. Let's turn the 3% conference into the 50% conference. So we've got some ideas to share with you today. Some of them we're already doing. Some of them we're just getting started. Some of them are too soon to tell. But I'm pretty convinced that all of them will really make a difference. So we're going to get into it, and we'll start by just introducing ourselves. Kristen?
Thank you. Kristen Cavallo, president of Mullen, Boston.
I'm Karen Costello. I'm executive creative director at Deutsch. I run a few different businesses, but my main business that I run there is Target.
Andrea Mileskiewicz. I'm an ACD writer at Mullen, and I basically got in at Mullen at the bottom and worked my way up, kind of like the Drake song, but that's my story.
It's all you, babe.
So basically, we wanted to set up the state of the creative department. I think we all know that, but we have some examples that crystallize where we're at. And we're not calling anybody out, but we actually have some real-life examples. There was a condom passed out, and actually on the condom it says, please do not have children. We need you here to work. And there's signs that hang up at Mullen that actually say, you know, I'm sorry, we're open all the time. And we have Red Bull. It basically paints a picture of, my gosh. And when I saw this, it was hilarious. Like, the condom is hilarious, but it gives a moment of pause to a woman, like, my gosh, what does this mean for me? And it creates, basically, how can I do this all? It creates a dilemma. So if we turn to the next slide.
So basically, the dilemma is, I think we've made vast improvements. So we talked about 3 to 11%. But back when I started in advertising, which was a lot earlier than Andrea, I was literally the only female in a creative department. So the fact that 39% of creative departments are women is awesome. That's huge development. That's huge change. And then go to 24% of creative directors are women. That's also awesome. But then what we're here to talk about is what happens. Like, what happens when there is that drop-off? And so we did just sort of a little sort of anecdotal forensics around our agency. It's not science across the nation, but when we started to figure out, okay, so of those creative directors who are parents, the numbers drop off tremendously. And so, again, being a parent myself, I have 2 kids, it is incredibly challenging. And so one of the things that we have to do as we realize, like, we've made strides with women, we've made strides with female creative directors, awesome. So what's happening as they start to rise up and really start to lead agencies, go from creative director to group creative director to executive creative director to CCO, why are they dropping off? And we think a lot of it has to do with this challenge, this dilemma that men don't have to ask themselves. Women have to ask themselves. There's a woman that stood up earlier and asked the question, why don't men have that same feeling that they have to be picking up the kids at 6, and why don't they feel like they have to make the cupcakes too? It's a great question, and I think that we have to acknowledge that in an agency we have to support both parents, dads and moms, or else moms will never sort of be able to feel like there's a place for them in advertising creative departments.
So the good news is that we are working in an industry where we are paid every day to solve problems creatively. The amazing thing is that we haven't used our collective consciousness to actually solve this problem. And so we kind of took the harness on this and came up with 9 ideas that we're trying to employ. By no means are they perfect, but we thought we'd share them with you, and then we have opportunities for you guys to share some back with us, because I think it's all kind of in beta, in process, and we're rapidly experimenting right now with different processes. So the first, my mother would be horrified that I'm, all those years she wanted me in cotillion that I never went, and I'm now like bubbling to the surface. My son, however, would think this is awesome because his mom has a cuss word in her speech. But it's funny because sometimes when we have sat down as a partnership, and I know Deutsch has felt similarly, and we have ideas, you'll have cool things you want to do, like sabbatical, or giving people flex time for short periods of time or even long periods of time. But people always say, well, we can't do that because if we did that for everybody, we'd go bankrupt or we'd go broke, or we can't offer it to everybody. And so sometimes that desire to be fair, I think, rationalizes our paralysis, and we don't do anything as a result of it. And so my first thought is I think we need to fuck the policy, because the truth is no one really listens to everything we tell them to do anyway. I was looking at some stats today where it's the lowest level of all time, people taking the allotted vacation days. 77% of vacation days are used and the rest are unused. At Mullen, we gave $500 to every employee to choose their own adventure as part of their training program, thinking that they might come up with new things, new ways they might want to be trained in ways that we couldn't think about. Only 20% of the company actually went and used the money. So my theory is, I don't think our worst fears are going to come true. I don't think the bulk of us are all going to run and ask for sabbatical. So let's try to do some cool things. I am like walking, living proof of somebody who broke the rules. And I'm going to give full credit to Alex, who's our CEO, who's here somewhere, because it was absolutely his idea and not mine. I wish I had been creative enough to think of it or even bold enough to ask for it. But when the job was first offered to me, I didn't want to move. I wanted to move, but it wasn't the right thing for my family. It was the right thing for me. It wasn't the right thing for the other 3. And so I elected to stay where I was because it was not good for the collective group to move at that time to Boston. And so my assumption was, therefore, I can't do the job. I can't be CSO. I can't manage 40 people, and so I'm going to stay where I am. And I was happy where I was. So it wasn't one of those nightmare choices. It was kind of one of those great moments in time where you're happy where you are, but you get a great opportunity to do something. And but Alex called back, and he said, I'm staring at this fast company, and it's saying we're one of the most progressive and innovative companies in the country, and I don't feel like we're acting very progressively. So why don't you go sit down with your husband and come up with a schedule you could live with, and then we'll see if we can live with it. And so I went home and kind of sat by myself for a while thinking, no one's ever offered this. I'm sure there's a hook, there's some kind of catch. But I came back and said, I have 2 kids. My son was a freshman in high school at the time. My daughter was 7. And I wanted to spend time with them. not just because I felt like it was my responsibility, but because I actually like my kids and I want to see them grow up. And so I knew I didn't want to do a Monday through Friday thing. I knew that was off the table. But so I called back and I said, here's the deal. I think I could do 2 nights a week away, but I want to be kissing my kids to sleep 5 nights a week. And so maybe I could fly up Tuesdays and fly home Thursdays. And then I immediately caveated and I said, but you know what? I totally get that that's completely irrational in today's business world. No one's going to hire a CSO and let them only be in the office 3 days a week. I totally get that I wouldn't be there on weekends. I mean, this isn't going to work, but oh my God, I'm so thrilled that you called me. And he told me to shut up on the phone, which I knew right then we were going to get along really well. And he said, no, we're going to do this. I think we can do this. And then I said, well, are you docking my pay? You know, maybe I'm only going to get paid 66% of the salary. And he said, well, are you working full time? And I said, yes. And he said, well, then you're going to get paid full time. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. So then I took the job, but I was scared to death. I was like, if this doesn't work out, you know, the first weekend that I don't come in for a new business pitch, is everyone going to be mad? But I'll tell you, it has been the exact opposite. I'm coming up on my 4th year. 8 months ago, I was promoted to president. That we've doubled the size of the agency during that time, and now we've extended the same kind of flexible work environment to a number of people, but on an individual basis. Not because we only think certain individuals are worth it, but only certain individuals have raised their hand and said, I really need some kind of different schedule. One of the people is in this room today, Lisa, she's an ACD. She and her husband work at Mullen, and when they had a child, they wanted to move back to San Francisco where their family is. And so we said, okay, why don't you do that and just work from home, and we'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. And it's been over 2 years. They're one of our lead teams on JetBlue and on Indeed, and it's been great. And it's been great for them, great for us. All of our creative review sessions now come with a Google Hangout. So we do a lot over Google IR. We do everything over Skype. We pick up the phone. We text. We don't really tweet, but I mean, we do not work stuff. But I'll tell you, I think it works, and I think the role of technology has helped it enormously. But my only thought on this is, don't let the policy get in the way of doing the right thing. There are all sorts of right things we can do all the time, and the sky doesn't fall, and you can experiment. We experiment in every other department. We experiment with creative technologists. We experiment by having labs. We experiment with titles. But we're not experimenting with HR for some reason, and we're not experimenting with benefits. And I would say liberate yourself from that and employ the same kind of beta thinking that we do when we talk about companies like Google to ourselves, and let's just try some things.
That's really cool. We also sort of thought about what could you do to really bring the family into the way you create work structures and you compensate them. And we do some really nice things for parents, I think, at Deutsch. We do a little Deutschers Day where we bring kids in and let them 3D print things and design logos and record radio spots and hopefully give them a sense that their parents work somewhere cool. That's our goal. We have a working moms group that is led by a child development expert so that they can get advice about how to raise good humans and try to navigate the balancing act. But I think if we're being really honest with ourselves, those things happen around the edges. Those are things that are sort of happening around the core issues. So we said, what would you need to do that was a little bit more fundamental to the experience of the work? And the first one is fairly obvious. We need to pay competitively. You're going to be making a decision about going to a single-income household, which a lot of families decide to do. It's much more likely the woman is going to be the one to make that choice if she has a competitive salary. And so we went through the process of doing an audit within our companies, and we were very pleased to see that women are paid fairly across departments. But we encourage everybody out there to do the same, because if you're not paying women competitively, it's not just about how you're valuing that person, it's about how you're valuing their family. And that counts for a lot. We also thought a little bit about benefits. Many of us are lucky enough to have a 401k as part of our benefits experience, because someday we may not want to do this anymore, right? Not a long time for us. We love it. But what if we also had the opportunity to have a 529 college savings plan, where the company could, from a benefit standpoint, be supporting not just us as individuals, but the families for whom many of us are responsible. We think that would be a really good idea. Childcare can also be a massive challenge. I don't know how many of you have gone through the daycare, preschool, nanny search. It can be overwhelming, not just from a logistics standpoint, but from a cost standpoint. Movie studios in LA where we work are major employers. And one of them, Fox, has done something incredible, which is that they have an unbelievably competitive pre-K childcare experience from babies up to kindergarten. That's one of the best of the city. And here's what happens. If you work in the entertainment industry, when you get to that point in your life where you're thinking about maybe starting a family, you go seek out a job at Fox. Not just because it's a great solution for a working parent. You go there because it's like one of the best places for your kids to be. It is a carrot to come be a part of that organization. This is something that we've talked about at ad agencies, but one of the challenges we've had is that we don't have a large enough population to really sustain that. But something really cool is happening in LA. By the end of the year, we're going to have 10 different agencies all within a few blocks of each other. So we're beginning the process of coordinating with the other heads of HR to identify what that population is, beginning to look for a location with a goal of being able to set up something competitive like that for ourselves. And we think about what that could mean to make LA a destination for advertising talent. We get incredibly excited. And we know that Kristen and her peers in Boston are working on something similar. So I guess I could say, look out, New York and Chicago.
Exactly.
We're really excited about that. And, you know, another thing, how many of you guys are freelancers? How many of you guys work creative freelance? A bunch of you. Several of my friends have decided to do that because they couldn't figure out how to have a career as a creative, but still be an active part of their children's lives. I know in part of my role as COO, a big challenge we have is trying to navigate freelance talent and making sure we've got the right people who are right for the job, and it's also quite expensive for us. So we had this idea of having a pool of freelance creatives that only worked school hours. What if you could work for a company like ours, 8 to 3, you could have all of your holidays off, all of your summers off, you would get a prorated salary, you would still get benefits, it would be predictable, and the agency would in turn have an incredibly talented pool of people to whom they could go to solve problems. This is something that feels like a no-brainer and an incredible way to solve the problem of bringing together great creative talent with great agencies.
So this one is about realizing that our clients are part of this solution too. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is how we as agencies can support our people, how we can encourage the women within our agencies to support themselves and speak up for themselves. But this one's about realizing how powerful clients are in this equation. You know, we understand what a key ingredient they are in creating great work and having successful businesses, but they are also powerful supporters and allies in creating a family-like environment and advocating for women. So I have a personal experience with this just because I had an absolute revelation when I started working on Target. Like I said before, I've been in this business for a long time, and I literally had never actually had a client that asked for a woman on their business, not just a female creative, but wanted creative leadership from a female on their business, like actively asked for it, actively valued it, and wanted to set in motion the things that could make that happen. That was incredibly powerful for me. I had never experienced that. And it really made me realize that that is what creates environments for agencies to create that kind of supportive environment for women. Unless the client is desiring it and actively valuing it, there is not as much incentive for agencies to create that support system within their own agencies. We can work as hard as we can to support our own women and to create great family policies, but if there is a client calling it Friday and expecting you to fly out on Sunday and you got a kid thing on Monday and they completely don't value any family life or anything like that, like that's a problem. And we're a service-based industry and you're always gonna have that collision. So it is such a powerful ally that we can bring into this solution. And I think, again, Target was a revelation, but I think there are so many great clients out there that do value this that we just need to bring into the discussion and have them be part of the solution. Oh, I'm the clicker.
All right. So the next time we actually have a video to kick it off. We could play that.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. I tried everything to get my period. Nothing. So, I faked it. Looks like Florida.
女人就像猫一样敏感。
Oh, sorry, Richard. You did know that we do that too. Didn't you? Hello, Caroline Williams. Yes.
So for this side, embrace the girl stuff. I will say that the last one didn't take part in this year, but it was so brilliant we had to include it. And it was basically feminine protection somehow catapulted it itself to the forefront of advertising, and it got off the charts views. So where we're going with this is, if you're only the 11% in the room, you're actually incredibly magnified. So instead of viewing that as a negative, bring your voice forward, and actually you're the voice that needs to be heard. And there's not just an audience for this, there's an appetite for this. Like, the proof in those numbers is astronomical. Like, the insights that were brought forward is why that those pieces of creatives shot forward. So we feel like, embrace the girl stuff. You know, earlier, Eliza on the CMO panel mentioned when she gets a brief about mothers, that actually the creative goes down, that it's khakis and women in the kitchen. I feel like the responsibility is on us as creative women to redefine what feminism in the modern sense is, and I feel like embrace the girl stuff, push it forward, you know, use humor, use truth, use wit, use emotion. You know, I as a creative have been in meetings where people have scoffed that, well, you know, American Greetings, they just want to make people cry. And they made it sound like a bad thing, but actually, when you harness it, I worked on American Greetings, World's Toughest Job for Mother's Day, and I got over 22 million views. When you harness the insights as a woman, you can actually take something really incredible and push it forward. So, you know, embrace the girl stuff, embrace your insights, own what you are, and bring it forward so there's an appetite for it and an audience for it. And yeah, run with it and don't view it as a negative.
And then also embrace the boy stuff. So there's a couple aspects to this, and one is kind of working off of what Andrea said, is as much as you embrace your girl stuff and who you are as a woman and the insights that you bring to that, whether you're a mom or not, it's also don't run away from the boy stuff. You've got to sort of embrace all that you can do creatively. So work on a car account, work on a beer account, take your brain and your muscle and exercise it in a bunch of different ways. Andrea said something earlier this week that I love, that it just makes you so lethal if you can do both. You have this voice, you have this insight, and you can also work, you know, on all those other things and have insights from a totally different perspective, but you're not niching yourself into girl products and that sort of thing. And I always try to tell my creative teams that work with me too, is don't niche yourself, harness, like what Andrea's saying, harness everything you have from the insights you have as a woman, but a human as well. We observe humans and we communicate with humans. But the other part of the boy stuff is something that a lot of people have talked about today that I think we kind of alluded to earlier, is supporting women in the workplace means you need to support the men. And men aren't the enemies. Dads are important people too, and you can't support moms and families and create an environment where women can succeed in creative leadership unless you also make it okay for the man to be a dad, to go home and pick up his kids from daycare at 6 o'clock. Like, I have observed over the years that when the woman says, oh, hey, I gotta leave at 5 to pick up my kids, and the guy's the one that stays, there is this perception that the guy's the harder worker, the guy cares more, he's the one that stays late and shoots the shit with the other dudes like at 12 midnight. It's like that, we have to make it okay for everybody to leave and have dinner with their kids, put their kids to bed, pick up their kids from daycare, and as long as it's okay for men, it'll be okay for women, but we can't make that an unequal kind of situation. So I think that's a really important thing that sometimes we forget about. And I would say most of the men I work with as well are dads and really want agencies to support them as parents as well.
So here's some stats. An IPG agency, KRC, helped pull some of these. The first 2 rows are actually from the internet under post-education. And I bring these forward because it turns out, I'm a public school kid, but for some reason both my kids are in private school. My son is in an all-boys school, my daughter's all girls. And there was there's no philosophical reason I didn't necessarily believe in single-sex schools. It just kind of rolled out that way. But the headmaster at my son's school presented these facts in the first 2 rows at his most recent back-to-school night. And the point he was trying to make was that boys need a particular type of schooling because they don't do as well in school as girls do. They start out ahead of the game, but by the time you get to the master's degree, for every 100 women that earn a master's degree, only 62 men do so. But I went home after that and looked at some of the research that KRC had pulled and then did some of my own and thought, wasn't it interesting, if girls rock in school, then what happens between school and the real world where all of a sudden for every 100 male CEOs, there's only 4 women. And when it comes to senators or ambassadors, it's roughly 1/5. Authors chosen for book reviews, again, 25 compared to 100. I think we have another slide full. Obviously, women are paid less. Even if you look at obits, the New York Times will profile male obits far more than females. Supreme Court justices. While I love the Joan Rivers and Connie Chung references to this morning, the problem is when Joan Rivers dies or Connie Chung gets fired, there really isn't anyone else. Diane Sawyer was there when she left. Chelsea Handler was there when she left. But when you only have one woman at any given time representing all women in late night television or in the nightly news, and that one woman decides on her own or is decided for her that she's not there anymore, then you have no one. And so we have no women right now in the big 4 news networks, no female late night talk show hosts. So it's funny, I look at my daughter growing up and I think if she doesn't see opinionated, influential women commenting on life, on politics, on world events, on news, is she ever going to think that she can be an opinionated, influential woman who has a point of view on anything? And so what is our responsibility in changing that, in changing those ratios and making sure that women have a voice and that women are using it?
So this is about
our aha.
Women suck at presenting. So I have a few observations, again, sort of being in the business for a long time. I keep saying that, but I have been. And I have observed a lot of women take a very recessive role in lots of different things. I think it's changing, and I think that's wonderful. But sort of in my trajectory in creative departments, I have seen women sit on the sides, not take a seat at the table, apologize when they put their work up, and say, oh God, I'm sorry I'm late, and they're pinning their stuff up, and the dudes come up and go, you're welcome, like literally. And the women are always apologizing for themselves. I mean, and it's just, I've seen this happen. Again, I do see a change, but I also think that we have a responsibility to train people, like give them the skills that they need to present well, to speak their mind, to give them a seat at the table, to show them how to creatively manage. You know, we stick these people into creative role, like we're all creatives, and it's like, okay, go start managing people. And lots of people don't know how to do that. And we should give them the tools. We can't just expect them to know what to do. And I've seen a lot of women, especially in male-female partnerships, the woman would take the back seat because the male, and often the dude is the better presenter, but that's not an excuse. So make the woman as good a presenter. Like train everybody so that there are no excuses for who's the one taking the lead, who's the one that's not. Everybody should be able to sort of speak their mind, sell their work, stand up and speak their opinion. And so one of the things that we've been talking about as a group is, you know, we should have leadership training. When you promote somebody to be an ACD, they should go to presentation school and learn how to lead and manage so that there are these skills so that it just becomes a much more equal playing field. And women have to sort of own that themselves. But I think as an agency and as a creative department leadership, we have a responsibility to help them do that as well. So I think it's sort of like, take it on yourself, but let others help you get there as well. And then I think there's nothing that can stop us.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that. I think you'll often hear people say, you know, we'll have the best presenters in the room, and it's okay because not always are the people presenting the ones who authored the idea, but everybody knows the truth. I got to tell you, I don't buy into that. I don't think you will move up as quickly if you cannot defend or persuade people of the legitimacy of your own idea. I totally agree. And so I think it's a cop-out when people tell you that you don't have to learn how to present. I think you are giving away the potential of everything you felt inspired by when you birth that idea. If you have to explain it to somebody else who's going to put their twist on it, their perspective on it, they weren't the ones who were inspired by it. But I do think presenting takes enormous practice. And at my last agency, the CEO felt very strongly, as a theater major, and felt very strongly about the people who would be in a room presenting. But we also knew that the people who were in the room probably got promoted faster because they had more visibility, they had more connections to senior leadership. Yeah. And so it's like the equivalent of being on the golf course. I don't think people play golf as much today, but if you're in a new business pitch, you have access to the leaders of your agency all the time. And so we got good at it. We rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And you have to figure at any given time, you probably, it doesn't matter how long the presentation is or how long the pitch is, no individual person usually has more than 20 minutes to convince someone else to back their judgment with your judgment with their money. You'll have 20 minutes to convince someone to back your judgment with their money. We were at the Mass Challenge this last week, which is an incubator of new business ideas, of startup ideas in Massachusetts. And 26 people would be awarded $100,000 to back their idea. Eric Schmidt from Google's on the council, and the guy from Uber's on the council. But every individual was given 60 seconds, 1 minute, to make their case. I mean, think of how important that 1 minute has to be. What are you going to say in 1 minute to make your case? But I think we have to do this. I think as women, you can't opt out of learning how to express your opinion and expect to get ahead and expect to be respected or expect to get due credit for your thinking.
I think that's really true. There's one other thing, yeah, that's true. There's one other thing that really struck me about Kristen's story when she was talking about how she had the flex hours situation, and that her CEO came to her with that, and she didn't think to ask for herself. I also think it's not technically about presenting your own work, but it is about learning to speak up for yourself and asking for what you want. So if you are in a situation where you're thinking about having a kid and you just don't think that, maybe you don't have a kid now, but you're thinking of having a kid in a couple of years and you don't think an advertising creative department is a place for you, go talk to somebody. Go talk to your boss and say, I still want to work here. What can you work out for me? Mm-hmm. I'm valuable. Here's how valuable I am. I think you should work this out for me. You got to learn to ask for things because people aren't just going to come and bring them to you. There's a few people that will do that for you, but most people won't. And nobody will give it to you if you don't ask. So I just wanted to make that point. So I don't see women asking enough, and I applaud them when they do, and I think it's wonderful.
So pull more chairs. So I had to follow Don't Let Women Suck at Presenting. All right, let's do this. It's called Pull Up More Chairs. And I start this off with, I think one of the first conversations we had as women was have a seat at the table. And I tell this story because in creative meetings, you used to be able to count the women who kind of sat on the radiators or the shelves instead of sitting at the table with their creative directors when you would walk in. And I know this because I was one of them. And I loved being in that meeting, but I don't know if it was subconscious or conscious, but I let this happen. And now, of course, I've evolved, and I sit at the table, and I would like to push the conversation forward. So don't just sit at the table, pull up more chairs. And it leans into something that I get really excited about. I think a trend that's happening in modern advertising is the creative department isn't just the creative department anymore. It's PR, it's social content, it's social strategy, it's digital. So inviting those people to come into the room, I feel it kind of leans into something that's inherent to women. And, forgive me for stereotypes, but it's like men like to solve a problem by themselves. Women are kind of like, all of us are greater than one of us. Let's bring them all into the room. So let's lean into our strengths, invite them into the room, not just for more chair's sake, but because they're going to better the idea forward. And I feel like that actually is something that's going to push ideas forward creatively. So pull up more chairs. And in doing so, you're going to widen basically the female representation in the room. I know that for me, on briefs in Mullen, they've gotten very good about, it's no longer just the creative department, it's PR, it's strategy. And I love it because some of the best rock stars in all of Mullen are in those departments, and they come in and they echo what I'm saying, and it makes the creative all better for it. So definitely be seated at the table, but I'm going to challenge you to pull up more chairs and do what we're good at and embrace more women being in on that circle. So Getty behind that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, there's that adage that which is measured is managed, right? And that's what we do. Whenever we do work for our clients, we establish KPIs because we want to be able to understand how it's succeeding in the marketplace. And we want to be able to give ourselves a little pat on the back when we do a good job. And we think it's incredibly important for companies to create objective and transparent KPIs for female leadership. I don't think we were especially proud to stand up here and say that only 4.5% of the parents in our organization who are creative directors are women. That number sucks. But you know what? It was important to get it out there because when you can get information out there and be transparent about it, it widens the conversation. It brings more people into the dialogue, and it creates something that more people can inform and improve. So I would challenge everyone, we've certainly challenged our organizations, to identify what those things are. It could be how you're compensating people. It could be your hiring rates. It could be your promotion rates. Whatever those things are, and make that a public dialogue. Make it something that you can share within your organizations so you get more ideas coming in and more accountability for moving it forward. And we really believe in that. And how much time do we have? Till 2:50. So one of the things we thought about doing, instead of doing a traditional Q&A, we're just 4 people, and there are, I think, 600 of you out there. So we've put on each of your chairs a what-if card, and that we're very, very interested in hearing about the ideas that are the bold ideas you're already doing, or the dream ideas that you wish that you could be doing in your company, and we want to hear about them. So if you could take just a minute to fill them out, and we'll have people collecting them at the back. Chris and I are going to collect those, and we're going to publish them through an industry publication, maybe even the 3% blog as well, if you guys are cool with that. But I think we have just a few more minutes, and so we wanted to challenge you guys, not necessarily to ask questions, but you've got ideas. Let's share them now in the room. Let's hear your ideas for what we can do to solve this problem, if you're bold and brave enough. All right.
Or questions.
Yay.
Is this on? I'm Scott McAfee at Sanders Wingo. The idea of pulling up more chairs is really important. And I was talking to a friend who's a woman engineer, which is also another industry that's a little bit out of balance. And she mentioned something interesting, which is when women go to a meeting, they think it's the place to develop ideas together. And when men go to a meeting, they think it's the place to show ideas. And what she noticed was the women were coming off as unprepared.
Interesting.
So it's important to sort of, how do you lay ground rules and not do it in a patronizing way when you call your group together, but say this is what we're going to do, so that even when you do have all the chairs pulled up, that the expectations are the same.
I really
That's
like
a great
that.
point.
That's awesome.
Hi. I would love to see us training our women in the sense of the presentation and make sure that they don't suck at presenting. I would like to train women to understand that every interaction is a presentation of their talent, and so whenever they're speaking, particularly to stop ending statements as questions. I think that this is a particularly problematic for younger generations, but it does continue on, and it bugs the hell out of me. So
true.
And I also wanted to thank you all and all the women who've presented so far for being incredibly articulate and strong presenters. You're all very well prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gail Swanson, and I'm here from Chicago. Very happy to be here today. One of the things I've been looking into a lot lately is, what if we started evaluating personal performance, on an individual level, according to results and the outcomes that we deliver, rather than personal traits? So we start using terms like, okay, what was your impact? What was your reach? Are people looking to you for your expertise? Are your colleagues coming to you as an expert for insight and to bounce ideas off of, instead of saying you're pushy, or you're too loud, or saying you're a great presenter is nice, but how about you really persuaded your client? And talking about things in terms of what actually you get to happen and the value you bring to your clients and the business instead of personal traits.
It's a great idea.
That's a great.
That's awesome.
It's funny because they talk about that in childhood development. Like, don't just praise like, hey, great game, or hey, you were really good. They always tell you to be specific with your kids. And it's true, we forget that as adults. We generally praise our coworkers, and that specificity is really good. Smart.
I would like to see, I think a lot of people are actually pretty encouraging when you are loud and when you are opinionated and when you come to the table and you kind of put aside what your title is, but I think that happens a lot on the side. Like, I get taken outside or I get taken to coffee and told that that's a good thing. I think that if people were publicly encouraging of that, if people saw that it's okay to be like that in meetings, that a lot more people would feel comfortable doing it.
It's great.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a creative director at Tribal Worldwide in New York, part of DDB, proud sponsor of 3%. And just wanted to share something that I started with some female coworkers at work. We all noticed, we started a change jar. We noticed that there's certain things about our behaviors that we wanted to change. I tend to worry a lot, and I tend to start a lot of sentences like, I'm worried about this or that. And someone else is very self-conscious about what people think of her. So what we started to do is anytime we vocalize the things that we wanted to change, like if I start to say, I worry about this, then I have to put $1 in this change jar. And whenever the jar gets full, we go out to drinks with everyone. So it's kind of a win-win. So.
That's a great idea.
I think we need a jar for sorries.
Yeah.
We totally need a jar for sorries.
This is going to be an odd perspective because I don't have children, but I feel like by offering just maternity leave to women that we support that perception that only women are responsible for the children. So I'd like to see paternity leave be extended so that is a shared responsibility.
Love that.
Totally.
Great.
Yes.
I'm last, and I've always gone rogue, so I'm going to actually toss it back to you all with something that maybe you have an idea for with a question. Kristen knows I run business development where I work, and one of the things we struggle with the most is having women in new business meetings for something more than being a woman. Do you have ideas on how we can get them in the room, not because of what they have below the waist, but because of real value and contribution?
Yeah, well, and above the waist. It's funny because I think the first time I got into a new business pitch was because we needed a woman in the room. And clients do such a great job, I think, in particular, of having massive female representation. Way even more so than 50-50. I mean, it's just sometimes 80-90%. And usually on the brands you wouldn't expect. I think the NBA is in review right now, and they have 1 guy in the room and 7 women. And so I do think the responsibility is on us. But I think, to a point Andrea made earlier, I think the way that you can create a collection of the modern day agency today, when it comes to idea generation, is as much about PR and the way something is produced and the way it travels and media as it is creative and planning and account management, that I think putting these other people in the meeting, in the pitch, even if it's not part of the assignment, is something we do all the time. So we are kind of social at the core of what we do, because we think of the consumer as the carrier pigeon or the media channel, not just the end recipient. And someone said something earlier about, PR agencies are almost dominated by women. And so I think it's another way of getting more women in the room is to think more broadly about the assignment and getting some of those, what would in the past be considered ancillary departments, to get them to be front and center in kind of a different approach to solving the problem.
Yeah, I would just echo that. We just hired 2 incredible women at Deutsch. One, Tara Greer, who heads our UX and platform work, and another, Montse Barina, who heads our multicultural group. And we just finished a big pitch. And it was imperative to us doing a great job on the pitch to have those disciplines represented in the room. We felt like it made us different as an agency. We felt like it made it better as an agency to be able to say, this is how we're going to solve your problem as a brand. So I really agree that that notion of pulling up a chair and really thinking broadly in your expertise and then hiring to solve those problems just creates more opportunities for more smart people and hence more women to be a part of that presentation experience.
And just to piggyback on that, as a creative, I feel like as a woman, it's really easy to kind of live in this pink fence. I call it a pink fence, where it's like you can be so good at the women things. But I feel like moving forward, lean into the guy things. Like advertising is an industry of understanding humanity. And I feel like women do that across the board. I'm being cocky, but it's like we can lean into guys and girls and kind of see insights. So take those and leverage those on briefs that maybe you weren't even assigned for. You know, I've been on briefs where I was left off them because it was stereotypical male. And, you know, I definitely had ideas and I would infiltrate them with different guys. And I feel like women, don't get discouraged. Like, lean into those briefs. And as an agency, they can put a female team on those briefs and maybe they deliver nothing. And you have 4 other guy teams to deliver the ideas, but see what could happen. And I feel like, as we all know, we're in an industry of creative. Maybe someone will come from a completely different perspective and bring something that's really human and really unexpected and you know, something that could be great. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Patty Clifford from Havas. I just wanted to share one thing. We've talked a lot about the stress and the balancing act that women have. And this past year, we had a pretty astounding meeting with our health and welfare provider, Aetna. And they provided us with statistics on how many of the women were actually going for their well visits, their mammographies, and things like that. And it was shocking how below the benchmark we were as a company. And I'm sure it's not different at other places. Yet, we were off the charts for well baby visits, all the basic pediatric stuff. And I think it's just important that we take on taking care of ourselves as well. And something very simple that we did was we brought mammography into the building and enabled 50-plus women to get mammographies who had previously not gotten them because they were too busy or canceled them 10 times.
Wow.
So
That's a great idea.
it's just something
I love
for
that.
us to consider for ourselves.
Yes.
Well, I think we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for your ideas. Again, please, no matter how crazy it sounds, write it down. We want to hear from you. We want to be able to share that back out. And we feel like this conversation is getting just the attention it deserves, and we really appreciate you guys letting us be a part of it. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.